All right, everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we kind of like to take these big ideas, and like really get in there.
Yeah, kind of get our hands dirty.
Yeah, exactly. Get our hands dirty with them.
Absolutely.
So today we're looking at free will. I guess like that feeling we all have of making our own choices, right?
Yeah.
Like, what should I have for breakfast?
Right, or like, should I go left or right?
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
And even like bigger picture stuff, like, should I go to college or get a job? Or
should I get married?
Yeah, should I get married? Huge life choices. But we're going to kind of look at the arguments that suggest that maybe it's not what it seems.
Yeah, maybe it's not us making those choices after all.
Right, exactly. And then we're going to kick it up a notch and talk about something else that's usually seen as a good thing. But we're going to look at the arguments against it, which is hope.
Hope. Yeah. So this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, this is going to be a really, really fascinating deep dive. And I'm excited to like unpack all of this with you here to like connect the dots and give us the bigger picture.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so free will, I guess we sort of take it for granted in a way.
We do. It feels like the most basic thing, right? Like, I'm choosing to talk to you right now. I'm choosing to sit in this chair.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So what is this idea of determinism?
Okay, so determinism is this idea that all events, including our choices, are like predetermined by prior causes. So think of it like a chain reaction, like dominoes. One thing leads to another, and there's really no escaping that chain.
Okay, so like our brains are just reacting to this chain of events.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And there are some thinkers out there who take this idea very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Harris, like writing his book, Free Will.
Yes.
He talks about this, right?
He does. He argues that all of our choices are ultimately a product of brain states, which are themselves determined by things like our genes, our upbringing, our experiences, all these prior causes that we have no control over.
So it's not really us making the choice in a sense.
In a sense, no. It's like our brains are making choices, but our brains are just reacting to all this stuff that's already happened.
Wow, it's a bit of a head trip.
It is.
And Daniel Wegner too, right?
Yes, Daniel Wegner.
He has that book called
The Illusion of Conscious Will. That's a good one.
The Illusion of Conscious Will. That's a great title.
And it really gets at this idea that our feeling of conscious control over our actions might be deceptive. He did all these experiments.
Yeah, tell me about those.
Oh, they're so interesting. So in one of them, he had people move a mouse on a computer screen.
Okay.
But what they didn't know was that the mouse was actually being controlled by someone else.
Oh, wow.
So they're sitting there thinking they're moving the mouse.
Right.
But really someone else is doing it. And then they're asked, like, did you move the mouse? And they're like, yeah, of course I moved the mouse.
Wow.
But they didn't. And so what this suggests, it suggests that our feeling of making a choice,
right,
it might come after the action has already been initiated in our brains. It is crazy.
So if we don't actually have free will, I mean, does that mean we can't be held responsible for anything we do?
That's the big question. Right?
Yeah, like what's the point of laws and punishments?
Right.
I mean, like Nietzsche was getting at this in
what?
Beyond Good and Evil.
He was questioning the whole idea of moral responsibility.
Right.
If we don't have free will.
Yeah, if we're not truly choosing our actions.
Right. Like, can we really punish people or praise people for things that they're essentially predetermined to do? It's a big philosophical can of worms.
It is. And this kind of connects to Steven Pinker too, right?
It does.
He's got that book, The Blank Slate.
Yes, The Blank Slate.
Where he talks about how genes and environment shape our behavior so much more than we realize.
Way more than we realize.
Right. So, I mean, like, how much free will can you really have if your genes are dictating how you are?
Exactly.
And your upbringing is shaping you in all these ways.
Right. It's like we might think we're making these independent choices.
Right.
But all these other forces are at play.
It's heavy stuff.
It's heavy stuff.
It's a lot to think about. It's like that scene in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment where Raskolnikov, he's like totally wrestling with, guilt and justification.
Yeah, right.
After he does this horrible thing. It's like, does that even make sense if he wasn't really choosing to do it?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like the whole concept of guilt is based on this idea that we could have chosen differently. Yeah. But if we don't have free will,
right,
then what does guilt even mean?
Right. Wow. So if no free will is a tough pill to swallow, get ready because we're about to talk about the downsides of hope.
Yeah, hope it's usually seen as such a positive thing, right? Like a beacon of light in the darkness, but
yeah, exactly.
What if it's not all it's cracked up to be?
So Nietzsche again.
Right.
Nietzsche again. I feel like he's our go-to guy for...
He likes to challenge our comfortable assumptions.
Yeah, exactly.
So in his book, Human, All Too Human, he calls hope a form of self-deception.
Okay, so like, we're distracting ourselves from the present moment by clinging to these hopes for the future.
Exactly. It's like we're always looking ahead, always waiting for something better to come along.
Right.
And in the process, we're missing out on what's right in front of us.
On Camus, he takes this even further, right?
He does. In the myth of Sisyphus,
yeah.
he uses the image of Sisyphus, eternally pushing that boulder uphill, only to have it roll back down.
Right.
To represent this idea that hope is a trap that keeps us bound to these futile cycles of desire and disappointment.
Oh, that's good.
So are we all just Sisyphus?
Yeah.
Pushing our boulders up the hill?
Right. And then it rolls back down, and we got to start again.
And we keep hoping that maybe this time it'll be different.
Wow.
But it never is.
And then there's Ecclesiastes, that book that just lays it all out there, like nothing's going to last,
It's the ultimate reality check.
Yeah.
It's like vanity of vanities, all is vanity.
It's pretty bleak.
But it's honest, right?
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, you're right, nothing really matters.
And maybe there's some freedom in that realization.
Yeah, maybe.
Nietzsche thought so.
He did.
Yeah, in Schopenhauer's Educator, he argues that too much hope actually leads to suffering. Because we're constantly setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you're always hoping for things to get better,
right,
and they don't, you're just going to end up miserable. He says true freedom comes from accepting reality as it is.
Right.
And focusing on self-improvement.
Right.
Rather than pinning your happiness on some future outcome that may or may not happen.
So where does all this leave us? Like, if we're not in control of our choices and hope is leading us down a dead end.
Right. It's a lot to take in. I think maybe the first step is just acknowledging these possibilities, right?
Okay.
And then asking ourselves, okay, so if free will is an illusion and hope is potentially harmful, how does that change how I approach my life? How does that change how I make decisions?
Right. Like, if we're not just puppets of fate, but we're not totally free agents either.
Exactly. Where's that middle ground?
Right.
How do we navigate that? How do we find meaning and purpose?
Without relying on
the illusion of control or the promise of a better future.
Wow. Okay. So much to think about. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
It's been a wild ride.
It always is.
And to everyone listening, keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.
See you next time.